Welcome to Chandler in Focus. I'm Vice Mayor Kevin Harke, and today we're going to talk about water quality and water supply in Chandler. It's a big question for some folks, particularly throughout the year as perhaps our source changes. And today we've got two experts in the field that are going to talk to us about that. Gregg is our City Water Resource Manager, and welcome to our show.
Thank you.
And we also have Colette Moore, who works with SRP, but she also understands the city side with her previous work in Mesa. So thank you both for joining us today, and let's talk by telling us more about your history. Colette.
Okay, sure. Thank you. I've been in the Valley since the mid-'80s. Graduated high school out here, went down to Tucson for school, but came back and have been here for the last 20 plus years. Started in environmental consulting. And then, as you mentioned, I went to the city of Mesa and worked there for nearly 13 years, all within the water department. Finished my career there as a water advisor, much like Gregg's position today. The last 3 years, since 2013, I've been with SRP, working in their water strategy group. Most of my day-to-day activities are spent managing our partnership with the Gila River Indian community, but I'm also tasked with looking at water resource supplies for our service area.
Very good. And Gregg, tell us about your story and history and what's brought you here today.
Well, I started in environmental resource management. I worked with the Natural Resource Conservation Service for 12 years in water resource planning, watershed planning, water quality, addressing water quality concerns in the watershed. I started with the City of Chandler 17 and a half years ago. I didn't have as much gray hair back then as I do now, but I've enjoyed every minute of it. My job in the City of Chandler is to manage our resources, make sure that we ensure our residents and businesses have an adequate supply of water, not only today and tomorrow, but also into the future. And again, that we manage our water supplies efficiently through our water programs.
And I understand as our previous conversation, it's kind of fun that we all share studies in college looking at ecology, environmental systems. So this is kind of fun to be able to talk with both of you today.
Great.
So let's start off with some of our questions here. Gregg, tell us where our water comes from in Chandler. Where is our water supply?
Well, we have a pretty diverse water supply in Chandler. It wasn't always like that. You know, in the mid-1980s, we relied solely on groundwater. So every drop of water that came out of our taps, it required a well to pump the water out of the ground and deliver to our customers. We now, since then, we have a surface water supply from Salt and Verde rivers. So we receive that through SRP. And we also have Colorado River supplies. So we have a very diverse portfolio. So if one supply is in shortage, the other supply we can rely on the other supply. Or if both our supplies are in shortage, we can rely on groundwater.
I would imagine that if we had continued with that track, we would be in serious jeopardy today, wouldn't we, in terms of our water supplies?
We certainly would, because the groundwater levels were declining. And it wasn't just Chandler. All the cities were doing that. Agriculture relied heavily on groundwater as well. So the state realized that, and they developed the Groundwater Management Act to help manage our supplies. So now the goal is to keep that water level in our underground stable so it's available for future generations.
That was not just controversial at the time, it was really groundbreaking, and I believe California wishes that they would have followed through as we did in the 80s without Groundwater Act, and it would probably have altered some of the dilemmas that they've had during the drought, wouldn't it have? Absolutely.
They're experiencing groundwater declines pretty bad right now, and it's all because they haven't managed the groundwater levels like we have in Arizona.
Well, we can't really talk about growth in the valley and groundwater depletion like that, particularly growth, without talking about the history and the story of SRP, and both with their power and water supply. Colette, tell us about that.
Sure. So SRP is actually two legally distinct companies. There's the water side of the business, which we call the association, and the power side, which we call the district. A lot of people are familiar with the district side of the business. You get your electric bills from SRP, especially here in the East Valley. The water side of the business was actually established in 1903, so nearly 10 years before Arizona became a state. It's the oldest federal reclamation project in the United States, and was formed really in a time of drought. The area was mostly agriculture and depended on the water flows through the Salt River through the valley. The water could be abundant, sometimes too abundant, and flood out the valley. Many times there was not enough in drought. And so through the National Reclamation Act, water became money became available from the federal government for projects like SRP. It required a repayment of that loan, though. And so the water users and the landowners within what is now Salt River Valley Water Users Association, those landowners formed together to create this group, put up their land as collateral against the federal government loan. And that is how Roosevelt Dam was constructed, completed in 1911. President Theodore Roosevelt at the time actually came out and dedicated that dam, drove up the Apache Trail in 1911, which was quite an adventure, I'm sure. But we have been managing the water resources on both the Verde River and the Salt River since 1903. Comes into the valley through the Salt River and then gets distributed through a network of canals all throughout the valley.
You know, I thought until recently that it was just Roosevelt Dam, Roosevelt Lake. I didn't know that it was Theodore Roosevelt.
It was, yes.
As the official designation until I looked at a map the other day.
That's right, yep.
Well, fascinating. So how are the reservoir and the canals operated?
So the reservoirs are managed as an integrated system. So both the Verde side and the Salt side, we have over 13,000 square miles of watershed that is managed to deliver that water supply here to the valley. So it's a vast network of the rivers and creeks that feed into the reservoirs. We pull water off the Verde system, so Bartlett and Horseshoe Lake, in the wintertime. So we're pulling water from that today. Because those are smaller in size and can fill up quicker with the winter runoff. So we pull our water from there in the wintertime. We switch over to the Salt side, which Roosevelt is on, for the summer supplies. Those are much more, they're larger and they're much more robust reservoir systems. Comes into the valley, again, through our canals. It gets delivered to water treatment plants. We also have a network of over 230 groundwater wells within our system that we can use to draw on to help get delivery of the water to our customers, as well as in drought, in times of need, we can pull groundwater and still meet our customers' demand.
I know it's easy to think, well, we had a good rainstorm the other day. We should have a good amount of water because all that water goes into there, but it's a lot more complicated than that.
Certainly, and especially here in the valley, there's a huge disconnect from weather patterns here in the valley and weather patterns up on our watershed. Again, that's 13,000 square miles up from Williams, Arizona, all the way out to the New Mexico border. So it's a vast area that really has a different weather system than we do here in the valley. So it's more important, frankly, the weather that happens up on the watershed than what happens here in the valley. Even for the city of Chandler, a lot of it comes from the SRP system, but also off the Colorado River system. So the weather here in the valley, it matters for water conservation and how you can manage your own particular water use. But the water that comes on the watershed is really vital. And so the water year is actually managed from October through May, and that's considered the water year. The storms that we've had recently this winter have been great, and we're already 150% of normal, and so that's wonderful. We've met that 7-inch precipitation threshold on the watershed, and that means that any new precipitation that falls is much more likely to go right into the rivers and right into our reservoirs. Prior to that 7-inch threshold, it gets seeped into the soil and replaces the soil moisture and can be used for the plants on the watershed, which of course is very important for a healthy watershed. But anything above that now can start filling up our reservoirs, which will be much needed in the summer. The reservoirs right now are about 50% full. That's pretty typical. It's the same level we were at last year. The reservoirs on the SRP system are much smaller than those that we see on the Colorado River system, so they're much more flashy. They can fill up in a season, and that's normal.
I feel like you've given us a spoiler alert saying that this is going to be a good season for water.
Well,
knock on wood.
Yeah, gotta find some wood. A good season is kind of an average season. I think we have to be careful living in the desert to not confuse a drought message and a conservation ethic. Those are two separate things.
Well stated. Well, speaking of water locally here, at different times, I know if people have concerns for our water, they might call our water department. I've also seen a number of questions that I've been fielding on social media of people with questions about our water quality in Chandler and our water treatment plant. And when people continually hear news out of Flint, Michigan, or one of the other water systems around the valley, either private or public, might have some issues either with wells or water supplies, then people ask questions. So tell us about our water treatment, Gregg.
Well, you know, we have the two water treatment plants. We have the Santan plant that receives Colorado River, and also the Pecos plant, which receives Salt and Verde River. But a lot of times when you hear media stories like that with Flint, it's a terrible story. But every system is different. Every distribution system is different. Every city's treatment processes and the ability to treat the water is different. Even really the staffing is different. So we pride ourselves in making sure that we're above and beyond all the federal and state standards for water quality issues. So we have a great water quality team that goes out and tests, up to 100 tests a day. We have somebody operating our facilities 24/7, 365 days a year. So we really pride ourselves on our water quality. But again, our treatment systems are important too when it comes to shortages, because we could rely on those two different systems on different canals, delivering different supplies to our treatment facilities.
One of the things that has always impressed me with Chandler is we have one of the lowest supply costs of water in terms of our taxpayer costs, what we pass on with our rates with people. Yet we also have to deal with things that we have to take out of the water, whether it's biologicals or lead is natural in the water, but we spend a lot of money to stay on top of that and address chromium-6 issues. So I think you guys do a great job. Do you want to say anything about that?
Thank you. No, I think we do too. Again, we have 2 state-of-the-art facilities that we treat our water. Our distribution system is, we test that all the time. We do maintenance on the system, which is very important too, keeping that system up and maintained for water quality as well. So I think we do a great job too, if I must say.
So mentioning that we have waters that come from different sources, whether it's SRP or CAP or wells. So with water coming from different sources at different times, I sometimes field complaints of people that say, my water tastes different. What's going on? Is it safe? The chlorine seems higher now than it did X months ago. What would you say to that?
And that does happen in a system as diverse as ours. In any system, that'll happen. Again, we're using surface water treatment plants, and we're also using over 25 wells that's within our distribution system. So we have to, when we switch over, we have to take the plants down every once in a while, the surface water treatment plants, so we can maintain those plants, clean them up, and do all the essential maintenance to keep them running. When that happens, we shut the surface water off and we turn our wells on. Well, that's a different source of water. They're going from a mixture of surface water and groundwater to 100% groundwater. So that could taste a little bit different, depending on where you're located within the city. We do have a great water quality staff that any resident can call. Actually, the number is 480-782-3660. And they can talk that through. If any customer ever has a taste and odor issue, call that number. They'll talk you through it, or we'll send someone out if we think it, if we think it warrants that as well, and if the resident requests that.
So with chlorine levels, is groundwater or is well water? Do either one of those? Do we have to assure in terms of the chlorine in there? Are they slightly higher one than the other?
Not really. What we have to do is we manage our distribution system. So we actually have 1,200 miles of pipe in the ground delivering to our 85,000 accounts. So again, it's throughout our city. We have underground pipe that we have to maintain that chlorine residual. So that's what we really focus on. The wells, it depends on the well water. They're all treated. We try and keep chlorine as low as possible, but also high enough to be safe. And that's our goal is to do those 2 things.
And Colette, how does SRP address water quality issues?
Water quality in our reservoirs and canal system is quite complicated. We, as Gregg knows, SRP does not guarantee water quality. However,
we do.
You do. And SRP tries to work with our cities, and we have a great relationship with our cities, particularly understanding that they deliver a potable water to their customers. SRP is a raw water provider. We provide the water that's in the system. We have lots of water quality monitoring sites. The municipal customers have a different requirement than our agricultural customers have for water quality. And most of our deliveries now are going to municipal uses, so we try to manage our system to meet those requirements. Again, we're pulling off the Verde system now, which actually has a different water quality and different water profile than the salt side of the system does. So we work with our municipalities and let them know when we are switching over to different water supplies. Also, watershed health actually matters, and the forest health really matters because when big fires come on the watershed, all that runoff comes right into our reservoirs. Sometimes it's below the reservoir and goes right into our canal system, so we work closely with our city partners to let them know what's coming. We try to manage best we can to get that water out of our system and not divert it to the canals, but sometimes that happens, and the cities are great and can sometimes just shut down the plant for a little bit and let that slug pass by. But we do manage water quality as best we can to meet their needs. And sometimes where possible, we can partner and do wellhead treatment on our own system and treat specific facilities to meet their needs as well.
Very good. Well, you had mentioned that it looks like this may not be a tough drought year for us, but obviously we live in a desert. And if not this year, next year, the potential is already there. So what are some of our predictions for our water supply, Gregg and Chandler, and how are our residents affected by what goes on outside of their control? And then we'll talk about our control.
Well, we have, we keep in close contact with SRP and also CAP, which delivers our Colorado River supply. So we're always, we always have a very good forecast of what those supplies are going to be. The prediction I've heard, the latest prediction is in 2018, the Colorado Lake Mead levels might trigger a shortage. And if that shortage happens, it's just going to impact the agricultural community because CEP water supplies are based on priority. So agriculture is the lowest priority, and it works into some lower M&I supplies priority, and then the highest M&I supplies. There's different tiers within the system. So in 2018, that's the most current prediction I've heard. It's not going to really impact us. And again, the beauty of Chandler is we have a well field that we can turn on when we need to. That's all about managing that groundwater level, just using the groundwater when we absolutely need to, using the surface water first. So if we do have a surface water shortage, we would just kick on our well field to meet the demands of our customers.
And then we've taken some additional steps to make sure that our supply of water and our priority is even more ensured. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, actually last year, 2016, we went out and we purchased some additional Colorado River supply. And it was a very high priority supply. So when the drought hits, it's going to take several triggers to get down to that supply. And that was one of the intent of purchasing that water. With that purchase, Chandler has enough water to get us through our projections through build out and beyond. So that will be our last major water purchase we'll have to do as a city. So when when the city's completely grown and the last building's built, we'll have a water supply available. But a secondary benefit is through droughts. And again, that is a higher priority water supply than some of the other supplies will be cut before that.
And I'm hearing more and more, even with the farming, about it's time to address flood irrigation and other type things. It seems like there's more people looking at smarter irrigation and the benefits of that in our state as in other states and other nations. And I guess the cost kind of we might have to go into this kicking and screaming, but it's probably going to happen more and more in terms of even addressing our agriculture in our state, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah, agriculture is becoming much more efficient than they were. I mean, there's a lot of drip irrigation systems going on, and they laser level their fields so they don't have a lot of runoff at the end of the fields. So they're doing their part as well. I think they're becoming more and more efficient.
Yeah, I think the state of Arizona has done a fantastic job managing not just the municipal sector, but also the agriculture and industrial sector as well. For the municipal sector, there's the 100-year assured water supply program where the cities have to go into the state and prove, frankly, every year with your annual reports, that you have enough supply to meet your 100-year build-out demand. That's a requirement like nowhere else in the United States. For the agricultural community, there's a certain groundwater threshold that they're allowed to use, and they are able to access and bring in additional water supplies. And they have management programs for conservation and things like that as well. So the state, I think, overall has done a great job in managing the resources.
And I was really pleased that our legislature held the line recently, I think at our last session, when then one of our more rural communities who had a big housing boom there, but they held the line in terms of that Water Act, Conservation Act, and rather than allow them to not have a assured water supply. So it can change, can't it? You get a different climate in our state, not just weather climate, but political climate, and throw us into a different place. Well, we talked a little bit, speaking of weather climates, just that we're doing well this year. How much does our reservoir water from SRP fluctuate? What are some highs and lows that you've seen in your history?
Yeah, well, I will speak from my City of Mesa history, not my SRP history, that specifically for how we operate our reservoirs is fairly limited. But I recall in the early 2000s, Roosevelt Dam got down to 11% capacity, which is very low. They worked closely and were able to acquire some Colorado River supplies to help supplement the Salt River Project supplies. But then the very next year, we got a couple good storm events through, and it nearly filled to capacity, and that's a huge influx of water. So the Salt River Project system is fairly flashy. We manage it to hopefully never drain it. We do not allocate all the water all the time. We do manage our groundwater resources to help supplement that so that we can save some of that surface water supply for the not so rainy days, but it can vary greatly. And specifically on the Verde side, you'll see if you go up to Bartlett or Horseshoe, those reservoirs, when you visit them, often look empty. They're not quite empty, but they look it. And we manage it that way. It's purposeful to capture that winter runoff. The salt side, especially the lower reservoirs closest to the valley, are almost always full. Those are often used for power generation, and so we keep those fairly full. Roosevelt Dam helps us ride that curve out. That's the biggest dam on our system, and it's the one at the top of the system.
So cities, we have what we call rainy day funds to assure that you've got the resources necessary. And I suppose it's the opposite with water. You've got lack of rainy day water supplies that you want to make sure that are held.
That's right. Every year we enter the water year assuming it's going to be another poor year. We never count on rain.
Well, Colette, you mentioned earlier, so Gregg, this is going to be a question for you, that the importance of conservation, and from my understanding, the average household homeowner probably spends a significant amount of their water resource or their water bill really goes to not what they drink, not what washing dishes or showers, but on their yards. So tell us about water conservation in Chandler, and what are some of our efforts and things that people can do?
That's a great point, because the majority of our water use is outside, and it depends on your landscape. If you have a lot of grass, you're going to be using more than if you have desert landscaping. But that is a key message for our conservation programs. We have rebates that we have available to residents that if they have grass, they could actually remove that grass for $200 1,000 square feet, up to $3,000. Yes. So we have rebates to do that. We also have smart controllers, so it's important the smart controllers are weather-based controllers. So what it does is it actually mimics the temperature outside and the climate outside to automatically schedule your irrigation for your yard. So that's important, but also indoors is important as well. It's important that you look and see if you have leaks every once in a while. And one of the biggest culprits inside is your toilet. So if your toilet, we've seen actually water, 30,000 gallons of water wasted by a running toilet. So it really can add up. But you're right, though. The outside water use is the most, the biggest impact to conserve water. And another thing you could do is check your drip emitters. Make sure your drip emitters aren't leaking, because a lot of times you really aren't out there to see them. So every once in a while, take a walk around your yard and see if you have any leaks like that as well.
And we offer some rebates and things available both to individuals and obviously our Purple Pipe program with HOAs too. Tell us about those kind of water conservation efforts within Chandler. For
the reclaimed water users?
Sure, reclaimed water, or you also mentioned smart controllers.
Oh, smart controllers. Yeah. So for our HOAs, that's a big impact for our HOAs as well. We have two programs for our HOAs, and that's HOAs save water by irrigating their common areas, so the grass and the low water use landscape. We have two different programs we help them with. One is we have a water budget that we'll send somebody out. We'll go out and look. We'll bring out 2 years of water use history, monthly history for the HOA to see what they actually did, and then we'll come in with a budget of what we, based on climate information, what they should have used or what they could have used, and then it'll show them the gap. And then we have programs like with the smart irrigation controller that will provide a rebate for them to install these controllers, again, to save a lot of water, because it's mimicking the climate, actually mimicking what the plants actually need. So that'll help them save water. And we track the water savings, and it's pretty amazing. They save about 500,000 gallons a year. Most of the HOAs, if they do a combination of turf removal and ET controllers.
That's significant. And Colette, SRP also offers some conservation programs. Would you like to tell us about them?
Sure. Most of our conservation programs really are in support of the city conservation programs. We do hold an annual expo. It's coming up in March 4th this year, where we do offer the opportunity to purchase a smart controller there. They retail for well over $300, but you can walk out of there paper-free. It's an instant rebate for just around $60 for one of these smart controllers, which is really innovative. It does mimic the weather pattern. Most of us, myself included, unfortunately, kind of set it and forget it. And so it waters the same in the summer as it does in the winter, and that is entirely unnecessary. So these smart controllers help you manage your water use that way. And if it's raining, it can sense that and turn off your irrigation system as well. And I think the city also offers an additional incentive for those smart controllers. So most of the time when we get calls, again, we're a raw water provider. If we get a call for a treated water supply and they have water conservation questions, we'll do our best to answer them, but ultimately we usually direct them right to the city conservation folks.
And that event on March 4th is open to?
It's open to SRP's service area customers, and you're welcome to come. We have Dave the Garden Guy come out, and they have several great expos there. The City of Chandler is there as well.
Well, very good. Well, we have managed to burn through our program. And I want to thank you both for coming here today and talking to our residents about Chandler and water. And this has been informative, and I know we've had other information flash up in terms of how people can get further information. So once again, this is Vice Mayor Kevin Harke, and I'm glad you joined us today in Chandler in Focus.